The for each statement iterates through each element in an array or object collection. The embedded statements continue to execute for each element in an array or collection. After the iteration has been completed for all the elements in the collection, control is transferred to the next statement following the for each. For eaches are really helpful when you're using collection type classes. What they allow you to do is iterate through a list of objects or collection without having to reference each element by its index or subscript. Let's take a look at an example. In this example, I have 3 customer objects, A, B, and C. And they're all calling a constructor, a one-argument constructor, which actually passes the customer ID. So in each of these cases, that value, that number, is going to be the customer ID for each of these employees. What's really happening is that there's some kind of field or data member called customer ID, and you're actually passing the value or initializing the customer ID field or data member. In this next line, what you're doing is you're instantiating a new array list called CS. And you can see that we are using the overloaded constructor that allows you to determine the capacity or the size of the array list. Remember, by default, you are provided with 16 objects or 16 elements. And we really only need 3 at this point because we're going to be assigning to that array list all of those customers. And that's what we do here. Notice the add method that's coming from the array list. There's an array list add method, and that allows me to add the first customer. I'm now adding the second customer object to the array list, and now I'm adding the third customer object to the array list. Once I've fit all of those customer objects into the array called CS, I can now group them together and do things with them. Notice this for each. It's really kind of nice. Notice that I can actually reference each customer element within the array list without having to use some kind of subscript or index. So the for each looks like this. I'm defining a local variable called I, which is of type customer. So I say for every customer in the array list called CS, I want to iterate through each customer. So it kind of short circuits the classic for loop. It just simply states that for each customer in the array list, I want to iterate through. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We don't have to keep track of the upper bound of an array. We don't have to keep track of the number of elements we have. We just trust in the for each that it's going to iterate through each element and it's going to know when to stop. So there's really no chance for an out of bounds exception here. It knows the first element and it knows the last element. Notice what it's doing. I is of type customer. So what I'm doing is I'm calling the customer ID property of the customer class. What that's allowing me to do is display a message box for each of the customers and simply display the customer ID for every customer. What we're assuming by looking at the instantiation here is that the first customer object will display the value 1. The second customer object will, of course, display the value 2. And the third customer object initialize the customer ID with the value 3. So that's what we're going to get here. So we'll get 3 message boxes, the first message box indicating a 1, the second indicating a 2, the third will be indicating a 3. For each statements are really useful when you're using object collections like array lists. What they allow you to do is rely on the structure of the for each to loop through every element of that collection. There's no need for knowing the index or the subscript. There's no need to know the number of elements in the collection. The for each loop will take care of all that for you.